Hey everyone, welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago. This week we're looking back at the hot comics from October 18th, 2024, and I'm recording this on, what is today? April 17th, 2025. Took me just a second there to remember the date. As always, I give you those dates so you know when this information is most relevant because the market is always moving and changing, although the patterns, they're fairly consistent, as we'll talk about. So why do we do that? And as always, we're looking back at the CBSI Hot Top 10 and the Comic Town Key Collector Hottest Trending Comics of the Week. Each week they put out a list of 10 books that are moving in the market, that are trending, and we come back 6 months later to see how they're doing in the market now. So why do we do that? Because obviously in the moment we get caught up. We're like, oh, this book's going crazy. I got to get it right now. Otherwise, I'll just be paying way more all the time forever. And it's not really how the market works. And so we would like to come back 6 months later, look at the patterns of why the book hit the list to begin with, what factors were affecting it then, what factors have affected it since, and would you have been better off being patient or jumping in? Usually you're better off being patient, but not always. There is some variation there. So just see what we can learn, make better decisions about what books we chase in the moment and what books we're patient on. None of these books are, even if they've dive bombed in value, doesn't mean they're a bad book that you shouldn't own. It just means that maybe you want to make sure when you're buying it, be strategic in how you buy. So we got 16 books to talk about this week. Let's dig in and see if we can learn anything this week. First up, we got a book that hit both lists. We got The Lot #1, and this was hitting the list because Bad Idea announced this was a Bad Idea book. They announced that they were getting basically that it was going to be an adapted for a movie. Don't know that they said exactly who was adapting it, but that it was going to be adapted. So caused some interest in this book. It became a $15 to $20 book back then in the fall. This all happened at NYCC. Now it's a $2 to $10 book, and is like most Bad Idea books, it's become a trap. And it's just really with option news. Even the option news was a little bit vague, and the odds of anything happening anytime soon with this was never very good. So yeah, it's back to being what it was before, a $2 to $10 book. Next, we got Shinobi on the list for the second week in a row, also hitting the list because it was being adapted into a live action. Last week we talked about it. It was an $8 to $15 book. Lots of copies selling. People were chasing this book. This comic that was based on a video game that's supposedly going to become some sort of show or movie. Wasn't clear what the live action adaptation was going to be. By the second week it was hitting the list, it was all the way up to like $80 for raw copies. Huge, massive jump in that second week based on this news. And I realize there's maybe not a ton of these, not necessarily all in great shape because of when it came out and what its target audience was. But yeah, $80, not sustainable. Now it's a $10 to $20 book, and that's only with 3 sales. This is a dumpster fire. No reason to have splurged during that second week chaos of people chasing this particular book. Next, we got Spawn #357 hitting the list because of the retail. This was the retailer exclusive, limited to 300. Supposedly all of them were signed by Todd McFarlane. So you see at the bottom there, the difference between this and like one of the regular covers is that retailers are king across the bottom, as well as the McFarlane signature. Back then on the secondary market, this was going for 400 plus right out the gate. This was given away in NYCC. People were chasing this $400 because of McFarlane signature. Now it's a $300 to $500 book, so basically sitting along that same range. Maybe you could do a little better if you're patient and looking for the right deal. 9.86 to 700, which is not a huge number for a raw book that's going for 4, but still going for really good value. So we're going to call it steady and worth it. It's sitting right at the same value it was back then, has not backed up significantly. Generally these, and we'll see, I don't remember it being on the list again. Generally these McFarlane signature books that have hit the list have backed up a little bit after 6 months, but most of them have risen a little higher than this one did to begin with. So some of those books got to like 600, 700, 800 right out the gate, and then they settled around this $400 mark. So this is actually fairly consistent with some of the other books where he's done signatures and they've had them like numbered and stuff. Next, we got Mark Spears Monsters #1, the B cover. I'll be honest, this was, as you've seen at the bottom, I did not do predictions this week, so I was right on this book. I didn't predict anything. So the one time I was right about Mark Spears rosters, $20 to $40 back then. Now this B cover is $100 to $150, 9.8 to $250. But only one sale on that. Not a lot of movement on this book. Just seems to be fewer on the market that are selling compared to like the Bridezilla cover or the regular A cover to number one. And I don't remember this particular cover actually hitting the list any other times. So one of the reasons I was right about or wasn't wrong about this one is because I never made a prediction on this particular book. So yeah, Mark Spears Monsters still up in straight cash like all of these have been. Yeah, hitting different covers. They're all doing really well for this book. Next, we got Aliens versus Avengers. Number one, the second print Virgin cover, 1 in 25 Virgin cover by Eastside Ribic. Obviously, this is the regular A cover of the first print. Just the Virgin version was a 1 in 25 on the second print. Back then, this 1 in 25 was going for 50 to 90. Hard to say what's going on with this because there's only been one recent sale of this particular cover. 9.8 went for 150, only one sale. I put down and I'll be back because the listings basically start at the low end of this $50 for raw sales. So 50, 60, 80, they're all through that low end of this, of what it was going for back then. And there haven't been any sales on the raw side recently. So it's at least a down and I'll be back because people are not willing to meet that $50 minimum to get into this particular book. Not a lot of them on the market, but the ones that are not moving at 50 plus. So we're going to put this down and I'll be back. No reason to have bought it then because although nobody's willing to drop below that price to sell it, the result is it's not moving. So, all right, next. We got the first of several versions of this book. We got the Absolute Batman number one. Last week it hit the list for the first time with the 1 in 100. This was the second week out on the market, going for $15 to $30 back then. People were jumping on this Absolute Batman right out the gate. People were interested in this book, were wanting this book. This is obviously the cover A. Now it's a $20 to $40 book. The interest is maintained. 9.8, 100 to 150. So we're going to call this up and worth it. Interest is maintained here. The book isn't gone for huge numbers, but it's still going in big. It's lots of sales still, lots really solid value on this book. It's been very consistent after that initial rush in terms of what it's going for. I know there's mixed reviews on how good this story actually is, but this particular book continues to hold pretty steady at where it is on value. So next, we got Absolute Batman number one, the Jim Lee foil version. So last week we had the black and white version of this. This was a 1 in 100. This is the foil version. I believe this was just a regular order and not an incentive of any level. It was going for 20 to 30 back then. Now it's a 10 to 35, 9.8, 50 to 100. So this one I want to call down and I'll be back because more sales are between 10 and 20 than between 20 and that 35 on the upper end. There's really like a $35 sale, a $25 sale, and then everything else is basically 10 to 20. So there are a couple of sales that make me keep the range, show the range that high, but realistically, this particular book, this version of the book has taken a step back. So we call this one a down and I'll be back. Next, that Jim Lee book on the list again. Last week when we talked about it, it was 110 to 150. By this point, it was 140 to 180. In its second week of release, this is was a 1 in 100 sketch variant. Now it's still a $125 to $200 book. So wider than the range back then, but with most of the sales kind of in the range back then. So we're going to call it steady and worth it. This one is held. The foil has not, but this one and the A cover both are doing very well. Still lots of interest in Absolute Batman here 6 months later. And despite me not being particularly interested in this, not enjoying this story that much, there are definitely people that are. So next, we have DC All-In Special number one. I believe this is the first time it hit the list that we've talked about it. This is the first appearance of Absolute Batman, Absolute Wonder Woman, Absolute Superman. Back then, it was only going for $5. The 9.8 did go for 100. Now it's a $10 to $20 book, 9.8, 1 to 120. Maybe I should have called this up and worth it as opposed to up and straight cash because it's not going for huge value. It's interesting that this first appearance of these versions goes for less than the Absolute Batman #1. I haven't looked recently to see what Absolute Wonder Woman and Superman are going for, #1s are going for. But yeah, still pretty good value. If you're really digging this Absolute universe, this is still a pretty good value to book to go after it, $10 to $20. So, all right. That moves us away from the Absolute portion of things. We do have a little bit more buzz here, though, before we move on to like DC and Marvel movie stuff. And we got Sensational She-Hulk #1 from 2023. This new Champions variant of Hulkette. She appeared. She was on this cover. Looks like several of these new champions were they were on covers, but they were not in these books. This was hitting the list. It was on both lists actually because we got news that she was going to appear in the story for the first time. Have her first appearance in story in Spider-Boy #13 that was getting ready to come out. Caused people to go back, chase this particular cover. It was going for $20 to $30 back then. Now it's a $5 to $30 cover. Again, though, I call it down and I'll be back because the vast majority of the sales are under $20. Most of them are like 10 to 15-ish. There's a couple sales up into the $20 to $30 range, but for the most part, it's a $10, $15 book on average. So definitely down, and I'll be back on this particular character. Haven't read anything with this character, so I don't know what people's take is on her particularly. I haven't really heard anybody talk about this new Champions team. So next, we got Marvel graphic novel Emperor Doom. Marvel graphic novel #27, Emperor Doom from 1987. Hitting the list because we got news that we were getting the crossover event for 2025 was going to be related to Doom. That event is going on. One World Under Doom appears to be maybe a very similar storyline to here, because in this book he took over the world, and only because he failed to account for Wonder Man not being under his control. He basically took mind control over everybody ruling the world. I don't know exactly how similar that is, but the current event is him taking over the world. So that is why this book was hitting the list back then when they knew that was getting ready to come out. $15 to $30 back then. Now it's a $15 to $70 book. Most of the sales, again, are still on the lower end, but a few of the nicer copies of this book are definitely pushing up towards $70, $50 to $60, $70 sales here. So we're going to call this up and worth it. Classic Doom storyline. I've not been reading the current event going on, but I've heard pretty decent things from most of the people that I've heard are reading it. So maybe there is a lot of interest there. Obviously, with the storyline still going on, still a lot of interest in this particular book, and it has been able to maintain and actually bump a little bit further in value currently. Next, we got Superman, Man of Steel, #3, the first appearance of Magpie. This was hitting the list because Magpie made a very brief appearance in the Penguin Show in episode 4 of the Penguin Show last fall. It caused us to hit the list, but it really wasn't going for much. There was a bunch of sales, but it was still a $5 book. A 9.4, which was the only slab copy that sold, went for $40. Now it's a $2 to $5 book, which is basically as cheap as you can get on eBay kind of thing. Down and I'll be back. 9.8 recently went for $60. Just no real interest in Magpie. She really didn't play an important role in the show. She was there for just a minute, basically. But yeah, so Magpie really wasn't anything to chase after. I mean, if you bought it, you didn't really lose anything, but the odds of you gaining anything were slim to none. Next, we have Green Lantern, #87, first appearance of Jon Stewart. And we were getting casting news for the Green Lantern show. We have gotten set photos and other stuff since that Jon and Hal are going to be a major part of this show that's coming very soon. I'm not sure exactly how soon, I'll be honest, but soon. Back then, a little weird because I didn't do the look back then. Basically, they had a raw copy, went for $200, and it was basically what was based on one sale that they were talking about. One mid-grade raw copy went for $200. 9.2 went for $12 back then. So there wasn't a lot of data to judge the raw side of things on. Right now, it's you can get raw copies of this anywhere from low grade to $50 to really nice copies up to $600. 9.2 right now, though, has backed up. That's what we'll judge on. Been multiple sales, 3 or 4 sales between $850 and $900 on a 9.2 in recent weeks. So yeah, we'll call this a down, and I'll be back based on that 9.2 sales But great book. If you're into Jon Stewart, yeah, maybe still not the best time to buy, but I bet you could probably still find you a deal if you're patient and look for the right thing here before the show actually launches. Next, we have Strange Tales number 126, first appearance of Dormammu and Clea. And basically, we got rumors that Denzel Washington was going to play the voice of Dormammu in some upcoming Marvel event, movie, show, something. This was coming out around when Agatha All Along was coming out. But yeah. So Denzel is going to be Dormammu, even though we've seen Dormammu in the first Doctor Strange movie. That basically he was going to be back. Obviously, we got Clea at the end of the second Doctor Strange movie. Haven't seen her since. Charlize Theron was playing her. Back then, again, they kind of described it as like a sale around $200. Like our higher grade copies were going for like $200. 5.5 went for $200 back then. They didn't give a lot of details in terms of like multiple sales and stuff of where this book was really going. Right now, it's like a $40 to $350 book, depending on your grade. No recent 5.5 sales, but a 5.0 went for $150. A 6.0 went for $225. So that puts that 5.5 still right around $200. So we'll call it steady, and I'll be back on this one. Yeah, 2 characters, Silver Age. I mean, 64. That's an older book. You can get into it for 2 pretty important Doctor Strange characters. You can get into this book for pretty reasonable value. So yeah, so it stayed pretty steady, and probably will for a long time. Next, we have Avengers: The Children's Crusade number 1. Raw copies 20, 9.8, 65 back then during Agatha coming out, because basically we got hints at Speed and Wiccan during that show. Obviously, that's been a big part of WandaVision. And there's been people expecting those characters to come to reappear, Young Avengers stuff that we've gotten rumors of and everything else. Haven't gotten any carry over that. So far, Elizabeth Olsen has talked like she may never come back as Scarlet Witch. We'll see what happens, but that was what was causing this book to hit the list, because this was just basically the storyline is Wanda goes missing after the events of House of M, and the boys go looking for her along with the help of the other Young Avengers. And they were thinking, well, that could be a potential storyline minus the House of M part. Wanda's missing since Multiverse of Madness. They go looking for her. Anyway, this book hasn't held any of that value, down in a trap so far. We'll see if they do any of this. I think it's pretty unlikely given how far out we've got a schedule, and there's nothing like this showing up just yet. And then last, we got Young Avengers number 1, first appearance of Kate Bishop, but also of Speed and Wiccan. This is a book that's been on these lists countless times at this point. $100 back then, 9.8, $250. This seems to be about where this book is settled. It was up a little bit. Right now, you can get into it for $40 to $115, 9.8, $190 to $240. This is basically, after all the times of being like, I think got over 1,000 at one point for 9.8, but for the most part, it's been going between a $200 to $500 9.8, between a $50, $60, $75 raw copy to a $200 raw copy, and back and forth. This seems to be where this book is pretty much settled for the most part. I don't know that I would pay much over $200 for a 9.8 of this book. So with that, that is this week's list. I want to thank you guys for watching. Let's get that out there. Yeah, so that's this week's list. Thank you guys for watching. Let's do a real quick look at values and trends here that we saw at the end. Obviously, at Mark Spirits Monsters, huge increase in value. Shinobi, with a huge decrease in value. Overall, majority of the books, a little over 50%, between 50 and 60% of the books declined. And then the rest, like 20%, either stayed steady or went up in value this particular week. Before I get out of here, I want to say a quick shout out to my members and thank them for helping keep this channel going. You guys are a big part of why I can keep doing this. Thank you so much for being a member of the channel. And then with that, we are going to get out of here. We will catch you next time. Later.